that can make a deep run, but I don't really know why. They're like top 5 defensive efficiency, top 15 offensive efficiency, and I think it's another case of just being undervalued because people don't know too much about them.
The only reason I dislike them is small ball. I've never been a fan of small ball. Not to say they can't go far in a tournament, but for some reason, and it's not that I dislike them as an organization, I just don't really like Villanova, and I never really have.
They don't have a lot of size. That's the big
that's the big reason I dislike them. That's the big reason I dislike them.
If they were to go up against LSU, which has Jordan Mickey and Jarrell Martin, they could get dominated, and even if they were to play NC State, both of those teams, NC State and LSU, are those types of teams that could, beat anybody and go to the Final Four, but could also lose in the first round. So whichever one of those teams comes out of that matchup, I think can potentially beat Villanova.
Yeah. All right, Carl. Let's move on and go on.
Let us continue on, and I think that I honestly think this is a very, low Cinderella type region. I don't think. Specifically, I think that the 12 seed Wyoming is one of the, I wouldn't say weaker 12s, but I don't think they have quite the upset chances. 13 UCI is not great on the upset chances. As much as I would love Albany to beat Oklahoma, it's not happening. Is there any team you guys see as a Cinderella coming out of this region, or do you think it's a fairly chalk type of region? Or if not chalk, still, the 4s and the 5s are going to be the ones who make it out of this region. Miles.
I picked UC Irvine to beat Louisville. Now, I'm not really sure if that's actually going to happen, but I just feel like, people have been telling me, you're just, getting all giddy over UC Irvine because they have a 7'6" guy. But it's more than that, they're a very good defensive team just beyond the fact that they have a guy who's 7'6". And remember that this Louisville team doesn't have a whole lot of experience in the big men outside of Montrezl Harrell, who's only 6'9", and UC Irvine has a 7'6" and a 6'11" guy. So, even if they're not going to produce much, they'll definitely be able to outclass anyone that Louisville has. Now, I'm not sure if that upset's going to happen, but if it is, I think it's a Cinderella story. The other upset that could happen is whichever team comes out of the Boise State-Dayton game that's going on right now, whichever team of that has a chance to beat Providence. But other than that, maybe Michigan State makes a run, but I don't see one of those double-digit seeds really making a run in this region.
I think if Dayton makes it out, I'm going to pick them probably to beat Oklahoma. I have a very big conflict if Boise State wins. And it's unfortunate because I picked BYU to make a run to the Sweet 16, and then they lost. And I have Dayton right now, so I switched it to Dayton. If Dayton loses, then I have another issue. So I've been put into a kind of an awkward situation where I may have hedged my bets too early on the play-in games. But I agree. I think that UC Irvine has a shot to win the game. I don't think Louisville is as strong as they've been in years past. Sure, they have Rick Pitino, but they're not quite the same team. I do expect them to get back there in a couple of years, but you lose a lot of talented players over the past couple of years that were key parts of Final Four and tournament championship wins, and it's hard to bounce back. But I've got to agree about Dayton and Boise State having a pretty good shot. I think Oklahoma is a good team, but I think they are upsettable. However, I don't know if there's really a dominant double-digit seed at this point that will make a Sweet 16 or Elite 8 run.
One last thing before I leave. I just think that whichever team comes out of this region will not make it to the national championship game. Whichever team comes out of this region will lose to the team from the South. Especially as weak as that South region is, I think those top 3 seeds, Duke, Gonzaga, and Iowa State, can beat any of the teams in this region.
All right, Carl, you got any upset picks?
Personally, I think my favorite upset pick was in my gut reaction bracket. I had Albany beating Oklahoma, but that's never going to happen. I personally have the Boise State-Dayton team beating Providence because I think either of those teams have the ability. But overall, I think it's a fairly chalk side.
All right. Miles, anything else before you go?
Nothing. Just going to say, let's go State. Thanks for having me on.
All right, Miles, thanks for coming on, and we look forward to talking to you later.
Yep, bye.
All right, that was Miles Fox joining us, and then Kim for coming in. Just to finish out the East, we still have to go to best player, maybe most underrated player. when I look at this, there's actually kind of a lack of super dominating players in this region. I don't think there's nearly as much. But Justin Anderson, if he returns to form for Virginia, I think he has the ability to be the best player in this region.
You know, it's my main man here. There's a reason I have Northern Iowa in the Elite Eight. It's Whaler. His name is Seth Tuttle. 15.3 points per game, 6.8 rebounds, 3.3 assists. All team highs. One of the most fundamentally sound players in the country. I think that he can play off the bounce from the perimeter back to the basket. I think he's a very special player, and I think that this Northern Iowa team will be led by him to the Elite Eight, and I think they're going to give, spoiler again, Virginia a very good run in the Elite Eight and keep the game close. Carl, let's just do Elite Eight because we've talked a lot about this region in terms of teams that can make it to the Sweet 16. Just Elite Eight.
Alright, just Elite Eight. I personally have that Northern Illinois team you were talking about.
Northern Illinois, Jordan Lynch?
I did that the first time. Me and you and Jake were running over our brackets, and I said Northern Illinois that time. Northern Iowa, with the help of Jordan Lynch, will be winning this game. No, I'm just kidding. They're not. I have UVA making it out. I think Virginia will be able to return to that form that had them as a potential 1 seed, and I see them coming out of, I think, a shakier bracket than many people. But you watch out for Michigan State. That's a team that Jake Leiker had, a fellow founder of Infinity Sports Network, and I think he has a interesting point. Michigan State has looked good recently. They took Wisconsin to overtime in the Big Ten title game.
Yes, that they did. I have Virginia and Northern Iowa. What do you know? We told you it wasn't going to be really exciting when we reveal our Elite Eight picks.
Yeah, you wonder why I started talking about college football here. This is so boring with me and Noah right now.
All right. Virginia.
I lied. Not moving on with me. I transition you to Noah to ask me questions about the South region.
All right, we got the South. Last year, Duke, they went down early. Gonzaga has a history of going down early as well, never really living up to expectations. Carl, are we destined to see both or maybe at least one of them falter again early this year?
I mean, here's the deal. I think that specifically when we look to Gonzaga or Georgetown, there's like every single team in this bracket is dropped early. But I think that specifically Georgetown's a team that could drop. But I don't think that either Duke. I personally don't see. I don't see Duke or Gonzaga falling early. I think here's the deal with Duke and Gonzaga. They both have obviously early first rounds, but then you look to either Davidson or Iowa. Both have significant holes for Gonzaga. San Diego State or St. John's, neither of them is nearly balanced enough to beat Duke. So I see both of them having fairly simple paths to the Sweet 16 and possibly further. I'm not going to reveal any more picks, but I think this is definitely an upset-heavy bracket if things go the right way. I think that UCLA obviously is not. I don't think UCLA deserved to be in the tournament, but VCU didn't deserve to be in the tournament, and they weren't. They made it to the Final Four. So UCLA does have some ability there. You look to a team like Eastern Washington, a team I'm actually picking in this one. I mean, they're one of the highest scoring teams in the nation. Over 80 points per game. Tyler Harvey scores over 20 per game. Venky Joy, 16.6. These are high-scoring teams, and if they get on the run against Georgetown, a team that chokes and chokes and chokes and chokes, Eastern Washington can do some damage. Look at Stephen F. Austin. Last year, they beat VCU in a game that was very similar to this one. All around the board, this is what I see. I see upsets possible in the middle, but the 1 and the 2 being the safe seeds in this one.
Well, to answer the first question, I do not think Duke and Gonzaga will falter. You know, I think people are so used to Gonzaga falling that a lot of people are just picking against them for that reason. This is the best Gonzaga team we have had or seen, I think, ever. Personally, I love this team. I've been preaching about this team all year as one of, if not the best team in the country. And I think they have a chance to prove it in this region with a tough team like Duke. I think they have, who, in my opinion, is going to be the best defender in this tournament, Gary Bell Jr. They've got the height with Sabonis, with Karnowski. They have the scoring talent with Wilshire. They've got Pangos. I think this team is just so deep. Byron Wesley as well. I really like what Gonzaga's put together, and I like Duke as well. How can you argue with Jaleel Okafor and Tyus Jones? When it comes to upsets, I think that there are a lot. I think there are a lot of potential. I think you can go Davidson, Stephen F. Austin, Eastern Washington. You can go with St. John's over San Diego State. I think there's a lot of chances for upsets, and I think this region could be filled with quite a few. But, moving on. Cinderella. I think this region, again, as we said, a lot of upset chances. I think there are definitely two teams that are primed for potential Cinderella runs. Carl, who do you think is primed for that magical Cinderella run in this region?
Well, if you look to a team that, beginning with teams that can make, say, the Sweet 16, I think that either Stephen F. Austin or Eastern Washington are good bets. Both Utah and Georgetown. Utah has been kind of up and down recently. Georgetown is historically very bad in the tournament. I think either of those teams has a very good chance at Sweet 16 run. I'm not saying they will, but I'm saying there's definitely a chance there. But I think if you want to see a team that could possibly make a Final Four, maybe not Final Four, but at least an Elite 8 run, look to Davidson. I mean, they may not even make it past Iowa, but I think they can beat the Gonzaga if they get off, and if they get by Gonzaga, then Iowa State should be another team they can beat. I don't know if they are going to be a Final Four team. I'm not even picking them over Gonzaga, but I think they will give Gonzaga a run for them.
All right, I've got Stephen F. Austin. I have them making the Sweet 16. Last year we saw them beat VCU. This year, I think they got a favorable matchup with Utah. Good team, solid star in Dylan Wright. I call him Dylan. I know it's not, but it's not going to change. For some reason, that name...
It's so wrong!
I don't know why. I managed to change myself from saying Kevin De Bruyne to Kevin De Bruyne, which is incredibly difficult. But I can't do... Right. But I'm going Stephen F. Austin. I got Stephen F. Austin. I think they're a solid team. I think they're a talented team. Very good at scoring the ball, and if they can get by Utah, I don't think Georgetown and Eastern Washington will be able to keep up with them. Thomas Walkup, Jacob Parker lead this team to the Sweet 16. All right. With that being said, yes?
I need to point something out, because I just realized this. I think that we did not notice this at all, just because nobody cares about Big West basketball, but Hawaii made the championship game of the Big West basketball tournament, and was leading at half. I feel like I need a moment of silence to remember the fact that Hawaii was almost in this tournament. Because I just realized this, and I'm slightly depressed they're not. UC Irvine is. But Hawaii was almost in. I feel like we need to accept how close that was.
Impressive. Alright, best player in this region. I think there's a lot of candidates. Carl, I think I know who you're going to go with based on who you've been picking thus far. But maybe you surprise me.
Well, I think you think... Actually, there's a few players I could pick. There really are a bunch of players I could pick out of this region.
You better not steal mine.
Well, I don't know which one yours is, but you know what? I'll pick one that I don't think you're picking. You talked about him earlier, though. DeLon Wright is a guy who can change a basketball game. You know, Joseph Young was the Pac-12 Player of the Year. That's voted on by coaches, so I won't say, you're wrong, coaches. But DeLon Wright had a hell of a season at Utah. I mean, when you look at this kid, he's got some skills. 15 points per game, over 5 assists per game. This team shoots at nearly 50%. And they're a really good defense as well. They're fairly balanced. I think that DeLon Wright, though, can carry this team over Stephen F. Austin, over Georgetown. Honestly, I think that they have a team that if they get on a good run, they could give Duke a run for their money, maybe be making an Elite 8 run, but only if DeLon Wright is good.
All right. I could go with Wilshire, but I think if Gonzaga's going to win, the best player is going to be my man. Best hair in college basketball. The flow is real. Kevin Pangos. I really love him.
Yeah.
12 points a game. Pangos.
Was not going to steal Pangos.
What?
Was not going to steal Pangos.
All right. I really like Pangos. 12 points a game, 5 assists, shooting just under 45% from 3 points, averaging more than 31 minutes per